Right, shalom, shalom. I'm going to start off this video by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rekah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone that rule well, that teach well, while learning truth 100% according to the Bible. I also want to say shalom to the elect, the 144,000 men, prophet, servants scattered abroad the four corners of the earth. And shalom to you, Akwaf, you sincere sisters and your children, shalom. And in today's video is going to be an update video of things that are basically taking place around the world, and this is NY Prepper. And I'm actually read the title of the video in which it is, so we can just get a context of what it is the video is talking about, right? So it said, breaking, Iran declares jihad on the U.S. and Israel, right? And I'm actually look up that word jihad just for the brothers and sisters that may not know what it means, right? This is the definition on the AI overview. It means to war against non-Muslims, to establish the religion of Islam, right? And it also understood as a just war or a holy war, right? So you basically got the Arabs, right? Those Ishmaelites and those Elamites over there in the so-called Middle East today, they're all joining together and ultimately going up against Israel and America, man. That's basically what they just did, and said for anybody that ultimately, sees anybody that's, so-called American or whatever the case may be to, ultimately to inflict pain upon them. That's what they basically just issued. So this is the time and season in which it is that we're living in, man, where things are constantly, heating up minute by minute and second by second, man. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is getting ready to allow all of these judgments and evils to manifest upon this earth, man. This is the time and season in which it is that we're in. And I'm actually go to that, right, through the spirit. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Right? And I'm going to start at verse 1, but the point is at verse 8. It says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, right? A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, right? A time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, right? This is the point, verse 8. It says a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And that's the time and season in which it is that we're living in this world as of now, man, where you about to see war like never before on a broad scale, man, because we know ultimately that's what Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is ultimately bringing upon this earth, man, all around the world, and especially in this place, America. And war, that goes into all type of different wars. You're going to have race wars, class wars, civil wars, gender wars, right along with World War III amping up over there in the so-called Middle East. I mean, we're just in that time and season, man, where war is about to be coming amongst all of the minds of these people that are ultimately not of the Lord's elect. They're going to be in a war state mind, right? Because that's what Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai ultimately have said that he's going to do in these latter times, man, as it tells you in St. Matthew 10, right? I'm going to get that real quick, right? Bear with me. Through the spirit. In verse 34, it said, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword, man. And that's why you see so many of these different nations being divided against one another, fighting against each other, ultimately having enmity and hate towards one another, man, because ultimately that's the spirit that the Lord is putting in the minds of these people, right? Of these kings and leaders that are in control and ruling things right now, right? As it tells you in Proverbs 21:1, that the king's heart, meaning his mind, is in the hands of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. So that's ultimately what the Lord is doing right now. He's controlling the minds of these leaders to ultimately be in a war mindset, as well as these people around the world, man. Everybody is just in that spirit of war, man, right? And hate. And we know that all goes back according to prophecy, because it tells you in St. Matthew 24:12, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold, man. And that word cold in the Greek goes into psychos, basically people just being, out of their minds, man. And that's what you're seeing the effect of all of these people around the world, man, because iniquity is abounding, right? These people are bugging out, right? So this is St. Matthew chapter 10, verse 35. It said, for I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, right? And a man's foes should be they of his own household, right? And this is the time and season in which it is that we're ultimately living in. That's why you see so many people coming up against one another. That's why you see people not being together anymore, and people are just, becoming more wicked and sinister as the time goes on. These people don't have any respect for each other. They don't respect people. These people in this society don't even respect themselves, man. And that's just the time and season that it is we're living in. And that's ultimately due to the wickedness that's increasing in this earth, man. And we also know what it says in the book of 2nd Esdras, right? Chapter 14. And I'm going to go straight to the point, right? Verse 17, it said, "For look how much the world shall be weaker through age, so much the more shall evils," right? Meaning bad times increase upon them that dwell therein. And that's talking about the people and the inhabitants of this world, man. So you're about to start seeing a lot of things brew up and get worse, especially with this whole conflict we see happening between Israel, Iran, and America, man, because that's going to be the catalyst that's going to lead to World War III, man. And World War III is already here, whether people realize it or not, but there's just different stages to it, right? It ultimately hasn't hit that stage yet to where you're going to see, the nuclear missiles being shot off yet, but it's coming, right? And I'm actually go to that, right? Through the Spirit. This is St. Matthew chapter 24, verse 6 in the NLT. And it says, "And ye shall hear of wars," right? You have active wars that are taking place. That Israel and Iran conflict. You got Russia and Ukraine. That situation is becoming more intense, right? You got China preparing to invade Taiwan, right along with North Korea, test launching nuclear missiles and saying that they're going to attack South Korea. So, you got a lot of different wars and threats of wars that are taking place in this time, man, right? And it says, "But don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately." And we know the end is going to be that ICBM destruction, man, when those missiles are ultimately shot off. But we know before that can ultimately take place that the MOTBC hub has to be made mandated. So that's really what we're waiting on to take place before we know World War III can really get intensified to the point of no return, right? So I'm actually getting to this video now. Fair use on the 1976 Copyright Act. Not getting paid for the video. It's only for educational purposes, only fair use.
What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NY Prepper. It is Monday, June 30th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 16:01 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Iran. So Iran's Grand Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi has issued a fatwa urging Muslims worldwide to assassinate Trump and Netanyahu, labeling them as enemies of God. Wow. Okay, so
Right. So you hear what it is that they basically just said, that's the order that the Ayatollah command, the people over there in Iran, I guess the people that are in charge or the heads over there, they basically just made a declaration, man. And we know that goes along with everything else in which it is that we hear them talking about here in the U.S., telling people to prepare for future so-called T attacks and things of that nature. So like I said, the whole stage is being set, man, for chaos, man, for all hell and things of that nature to ultimately to break loose in this place, America, man, and around the world. Because once we know a so-called T attack happens here in America, guess what? They're going to blame Iran. And like I said, this all just goes back to World War III, man, which is going to continue to get more heated and heated as time goes on, right? So I'm actually go to that precept, right, through the Spirit. This is Revelations chapter 11, verse 14, KJV. It says, "The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly," man, which is talking about the battle of Armageddon that it tells you about in the book of Revelations, which is going to be the third world's war, man, when the Lord is going to lead all of these nations to the valley of Jehoshaphat, man, America, Israel, all of these different nations to fight over there in the so-called Middle East, man, right, where they're ultimately going to be judged, man, by Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushua. But that's what we see all of these different skirmishes and different, back and forth talks and threats leading up to us, man. Right.
Wow. Okay, so one of Iran's Grand Ayatollahs basically issuing a Jihad order. This is extremely concerning. And before I continue with the...
Salakia. I'm going to skip past that. But yeah, this is what we hear them basically talking about. They just basically sent out a declaration against anybody to ultimately to come up against, Trump and Netanyahu, man. That's real important news, It just shows you how intensifying things are actually getting, man, how worse things are ultimately getting, And this happens right around the time where you have Donald Trump ultimately talking about peace, man, right? And I'm going to go to that precept through the spirit, and then we'll get back into the video. Right. But this happens right around the time you got Donald Trump telling everybody over there in so-called Israel and the people here in America that there's going to be peace deals and things of that nature. Right. They just so-called had a ceasefire maybe about a week ago, man. But here it is. You got now the Ayatollah, basically putting hits on Trump and Netanyahu's head, man. Right. So we know that no peace is coming, man. Only destruction. So this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, right, which is what you've been hearing Donald Trump pushing since he ultimately came into the White House the last 5 months ago, right? It said, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. And that's ultimately what's about to happen, man. We know destruction is coming, right? No such thing as peace or any of these different types of things in which it is that we ultimately hear these leaders ultimately trying to push out as the narrative to the people. We know that that's not coming, man. What's coming is, judgment from Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. And ultimately, the main judgment is going to be those ICBM missiles that are going to be shot off during World War III, man. Right? Salakia.
South Dakota, we have 2 RC-135 rivet joints that are flying north to south through North and South Dakota, which means that they're looking east and west at something, some kind of threat. So something is definitely brewing around the U.S. for them to be sending 2 of these recon planes from Stratcom headquarters, not just from any base, but Stratcom headquarters in Offutt Air Base. And there's reports this afternoon of air defense activity and explosions seen by residents of Tehran, the capital of Iran, in the sky. So,
all right, so you basically get a gist of what it is the guy's basically saying in the video, but things are getting worse, brothers and sisters, day in and day out. Each day that progresses, things are just getting more intensified, especially over there in what they call today the so-called Middle East. But like I said, we're living in that time where the Lord is getting ready to bring forth judgment, man, upon this world and upon these wicked people. So we know ultimately what all of these situations that we see occurring with Israel and Iran and America going back and forth, what is ultimately going to lead to, right? Which is coming very soon, man. So, that's pretty much everything I had to say with today's video. Lord's willing to be edifying, just some quick through the spirit, a little update. To the next time, I'm going to say shalom to the elect.